The scent of 1,000 white lilies was suffocating. They spilled from oversized crystal vases, their funereal perfume mingling with the expensive champagne and the murmur of polite, predatory conversation. Our family home, a sprawling stone manor that always felt more like a museum than a home, was alive with the glitter of my engagement party. And I, Elara, was the prize exhibit. My fiancé, Liam, squeezed my hand, his warmth a welcome anchor in the swirling sea of my family's old money associates. He was everything they were not, self-made, unpretentious, with a smile that reached his eyes instead of just his lips. My father, Richard, tolerated him. My mother, Eleanor, despised him with a quiet, venomous grace. She was gliding towards us now, a vision in emerald silk, her smile a perfect, painted arc that didn't touch the cold calculation in her eyes. "My darling," she cooed, her voice smooth as cream. "You look radiant." "Doesn't she look radiant, Liam?" "She always does," Liam said, his gaze on me, genuine and loving. It was a look that my mother couldn't stand. To her, Liam wasn't just a man from a different class, he was a contamination, a threat to the pristine, carefully constructed lineage of the Blackwood family. "I've brought you something special," Eleanor said, ignoring Liam. She held out a single glass of deep, blood-red wine. It was different from the champagne everyone else was drinking. From the private cellar. A 1985 Chateau Margaux. For my special girl on her special night. Her smile widened, but it was a strange, tight thing. It was the smile of a predator that has its prey cornered. A chill, entirely separate from the evening air, snaked down my spine. I took the glass, my fingers brushing hers. Her skin was ice-cold. "Thank you, Mother," I said, my voice betraying none of the sudden unease churning in my stomach. As she turned to mingle with a group of banking tycoons, I brought the glass closer. I wasn't a wine connoisseur, but I knew what good wine was supposed to smell like. This wasn't it. Underneath the rich, fruity aroma of the Bordeaux, there was another scent. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but sharp and unpleasant. A bitter, vaguely metallic smell, like crushed almonds left out in the rain. It smelled off. Wrong. My heart began to beat a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Was I being paranoid? My mother's disapproval of my engagement was no secret. She tried everything from subtle manipulation to outright emotional blackmail to break us up. But this felt different. Darker. "Ugh, this champagne is so boring," a voice chirped beside me. It was my younger sister, Lena. She was the family's ray of sunshine, effervescent and blissfully unaware of the dark undercurrents that ran through our home. She bounced on the balls of her feet, her own glass of champagne sloshing precariously. What's that? Mom gave you the good stuff and left me with the bubbles?" "Typical." She pouted, but her eyes twinkled. An idea, reckless and born of pure instinct, flashed in my mind. It was a terrible, selfish idea, but the acrid smell from the glass was screaming at me. "You want it?" I asked, feigning casualness. "I'm not really in the mood for red wine, to be honest. It'll probably stain my teeth before the photos." Lena's face lit up. "Are you serious? A vintage Margaux? Don't mind if I do." Without a second thought, she swapped her champagne flute for my wine glass. "Cheers to you, big sis. May your marriage be less boring than this champagne." She took a generous gulp. I watched, my throat tight, as the dark liquid passed her lips. For a moment, I almost snatched it back. What was I doing? This was my sister. But the fear, cold and sharp, had already taken root. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that my mother, for all her faults, would never, she couldn't. We spent the next 30 minutes working the room. I smiled, I laughed, I accepted congratulations, but my eyes never strayed far from Lena. She was flitting from group to group, the life of the party, the red wine glass still in her hand. She seemed fine. Perfectly fine. The knot of anxiety in my chest began to loosen. I was a fool. I had let my mother's psychological warfare get to me, turning me into a paranoid mess. Then, it happened. Lena was laughing at a joke one of our cousins told. The laugh caught in her throat, turning into a strangled cough. She brought a hand to her chest, her brow furrowed in confusion. The wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the polished marble floor, splashing crimson like an omen. "Lena?" I called out, starting towards her. She looked at me, her eyes wide with a terror she didn't understand. Her face, usually so full of life, had gone terrifyingly pale. She opened her mouth to speak, but only a soft gasp came out. Her legs buckled. She collapsed in a heap of satin and chiffon, motionless on the floor. The music screeched to a halt. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Liam was shouting my name, my father was yelling for someone to call an ambulance. But I couldn't hear them. All I could see was my sister's still form and the dark red stains spreading on the white marble floor. And across the room, I saw my mother. For a split second, before the mask of maternal panic slammed into place, I saw her face. The strange smile was gone, replaced by a flicker of pure, unadulterated shock. It wasn't the shock of a worried mother. It was the shock of someone whose meticulous plan had gone horribly, horribly wrong. The sterile, antiseptic smell of the hospital was a harsh contrast to the cloying lilies of the party. It was a smell of crisis, of life hanging by a thread. Lena's thread. She was lying in a private room in the ICU, a tangle of tubes and wires connecting her to a symphony of beeping machines. She was breathing, but only just. The doctors were baffled. "Her vitals are unstable," Dr. Evans had told us, his face grim. "It's like a systemic shutdown. We've run a standard toxicology screen, but nothing conclusive has come back. We're sending samples for more advanced testing, but it could take days. For now, all we can do is support her systems and hope her body can fight off whatever this is." Whatever this is. The phrase echoed in my mind, each word a hammer blow of guilt. I knew what it was. It wasn't a glass of red wine. It was meant for me. My father paced the waiting room like a caged animal, his face ashen, barking orders into his phone and his assistants. Liam stayed by my side, a silent, solid presence, his hand a constant pressure on my lower back. But it was my mother I couldn't stop watching. Eleanor played the part of the distraught mother to perfection. She sat perfectly still, her hands clasped in her lap, a single, elegant tear tracing a path down her cheek. She spoke to the nurses in hushed, concerned tones. Anyone looking at her would see a matriarch in agony. But I saw the truth. I saw the calculated grief, the performance. And beneath it, I could almost feel the frantic whirring of her mind, recalculating, recalibrating her plan. The guilt was a physical entity, a lead weight in my gut. I had let my sister drink poison meant for me. How could I ever tell anyone? "Hello, police?" My mother tried to poison me, but I cleverly gave the glass to my sister instead. They would lock me in a psychiatric ward. I was trapped in a nightmare of my own making. Late that night, when my father had finally gone home to make arrangements and Liam had stepped out to get coffee, I was alone with her. "She's strong," Eleanor said softly, her voice like silk. "Lena has always been a fighter." "What did you put in the wine, Mother?" I asked, my voice a low, shaking whisper. I didn't look at her. I couldn't. I kept my eyes fixed on my sister's pale face. The air grew thick with unspoken words. I could feel her stiffen, the manufactured sorrow evaporating to be replaced by something cold and hard. "Elara," she said, her tone dripping with disappointment. "You are overwrought. The stress of the engagement, and now this, it's making you delusional. How could you even think such a thing? I gave you that wine as a celebration." "It smelled wrong," I said, turning to face her. "It smelled like almonds. Like poison." Her eyes were chips of ice. "You have a vivid imagination. You always have." It was a beautiful, expensive wine. Perhaps a bit too complex for your palate. The gaslighting was so effortless, so practiced. She was trying to make me believe I was the one who was crazy. Lena drank it and she collapsed 30 minutes later. That's not my imagination. A tragic, unexplainable medical event, she countered smoothly. The doctors said so themselves. Now is not the time for these hysterical accusations. Our family needs to present a united front. Think of our reputation. Our reputation. It was always about that. Not about her daughter lying near death in a hospital bed. I knew I wouldn't get a confession. Not from her. I needed proof. The next morning, telling Liam I needed some air, I drove back to the house. The staff were cleaning up the last remnants of the party. The lilies were wilted, their scent now one of decay. The blood-red wine stain had been scrubbed from the marble, but I could still see its ghost. My target was my mother's study. It was her sanctuary, an oak-paneled room filled with leather-bound books and family ledgers. It was where she managed the Blackwood Empire with an iron fist. I felt like a trespasser, my heart hammering as I slipped inside and closed the door. I didn't know what I was looking for. A bottle, a vial, a note. I started with her desk, carefully opening drawers. Financial statements, correspondence, event plans. Nothing. I checked the small, built-in bar. Bottles of scotch, gin, brandy. All sealed, all normal. Frustration mounted. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was going crazy. Then my eyes landed on a row of seemingly decorative antique boxes on a high shelf. One was a small, intricately carved rosewood box that seemed out of place among the others. I needed a chair to reach it. It was heavier than it looked and wasn't locked. My breath hitched as I opened the lid. It wasn't full of old letters or jewelry. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, were several small, amber glass vials with rubber stoppers. All of them were empty, except one. It was half full of a clear, slightly viscous liquid. Beside the vials lay a small, leather-bound book. I opened it. It wasn't a diary. It was a handwritten journal, filled with my mother's elegant script. But it wasn't about her life. It was a detailed study. The pages were filled with notes on botany, chemistry, and toxicology. I flipped through the pages, my blood running cold. There were detailed entries on various plant-based neurotoxins. Aconite. Hemlock. And then I saw it. A page dedicated to oleandernarium, a common ornamental shrub. My mother had a whole row of them in her prized greenhouse. The notes described how to extract its potent cardiac glycosides. The text detailed the symptoms of ingestion, nausea, dizziness, a catastrophic drop in heart rate, coma. And it mentioned a faint, bitter almond smell when concentrated. At the bottom of the page, in a recent, slightly different ink, was a chilling, single-line entry: dosage for 130 pounds female, non-lethal incapacitation, 2.5 milliliters, effects within 30 to 45 minutes. I weighed 130 pounds. Lena weighed 115. My mother hadn't just tried to poison me. She had calculated the dose. The world had tilted on its axis. The knowledge of what I'd found sat like a stone in my stomach, cold and heavy. I took a photo of the journal page and the vials with my phone, my hands shaking so badly the first few shots were blurry. I put the box back exactly where I found it, wiped my fingerprints from the chair, and fled the house. The ghost of my mother's clinical handwriting burned into my mind. I couldn't go to the police. Not yet. A photo of a notebook and an empty vial? My mother, with her army of lawyers and her impeccable public image, would shred the evidence. She would paint me as a hysterical, grieving daughter lashing out. She would use my love for Lena against me. I needed more. I needed a motive that a jury could understand. There was only one person I could trust. I found Liam in the hospital cafeteria, staring into a cup of coffee as if it held the answers to the universe. His face was etched with exhaustion. When he saw me, a flicker of concern crossed his features. "Elara, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Worse," I said, my voice barely a whisper. I led him to a deserted corner of the hospital garden, the air thick with the smell of damp earth. My heart pounded as I told him everything. The smell of the wine. The swap. The study. The rosewood box. The journal. I showed him the photo on my phone. He listened without interruption, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief, and finally to a cold, hard anger that mirrored my own. He didn't doubt me for a second. The way he looked at the photo, at the calculated dosage written in my mother's hand, erased any lingering fear that he would think I was insane. He believed me. That monster, he breathed, his hand clenching into a fist. She was going to, and Lena, because of me. It's not your fault, Liam, I said, my voice fierce. This is about her. Her obsession with control, with legacy. You were just the catalyst. So what do we do? He asked, his mind already shifting into problem-solving mode. It was one of the things I loved about him. He didn't panic, he planned. She wrote non-lethal incapacitation, I said, the words tasting like ash. She wasn't trying to kill me. She was trying to take me out of the picture. To stop the wedding. She miscalculated the dose for Lena. She's smaller, more petite. A coma would certainly stop a wedding, Liam said grimly. She'd get what she wanted, and everyone would just think it was a tragic illness. It's diabolical. We were a team now, allies in a secret war against my own mother. We spent the next day in Liam's small, modern apartment, a world away from the oppressive grandeur of my family home. While I stayed by the phone, waiting for any news from the hospital, Liam put his considerable skills to work. He wasn't from old money, but he was a brilliant forensic accountant who had made his fortune by finding the secrets other people tried to bury in financial records. He started digging into the Blackwood family holdings. Your mother controls everything, he said after hours of staring at his laptop, his brow furrowed. Your father is the face, but the trusts, the investments, the offshore accounts, it's all in her name or controlled by entities she's the sole director of. She's been consolidating power for years. She always said she was protecting the family legacy, I murmured, remembering the phrase she used so often. She's not protecting it, Liam said, pointing at a complex flowchart on his screen. She's hoarding it. And look at this. There's a clause in the primary family trust. A morality clause, of all things. It gives the trustee, your mother, the power to disinherit any beneficiary who brings disrepute upon the family name or marries without the trustee's approval. There it was. The motive, written in cold, legal jargon. If I married Liam, my mother could legally cut me off, but it would be messy and could be challenged. If I were conveniently in a coma, the wedding would be off indefinitely. She could consolidate her control and work on turning me against him, all while playing the role of the devoted mother caring for her mysteriously ill daughter. As Liam continued to dig, I focused on the poison. Oleander. I researched it relentlessly. It was clever. The active compounds, the cardiac glycosides, mimic the effects of a heart attack. In small doses, it could be misdiagnosed, especially if the doctors weren't specifically looking for it. The standard toxicology screen wouldn't find it. A call from the hospital interrupted our frantic research. It was Dr. Evans. Alara, we have an update, he said, his voice strained. Lena's heart rate has stabilized slightly. It's a small improvement, but it's something. A wave of relief so intense it made me dizzy washed over me. Oh, thank God. That's wonderful news. There's more, he continued, his tone shifting. We sent her blood work to a specialized toxicology lab in Switzerland, on a hunch. We just got the preliminary results back. They found something. Traces of a highly potent cardiotoxic steroid. Specifically, oleandrin. My blood turned to ice. They knew. It's the active poison in the oleander plant, Dr. Evans said. It's incredibly rare to see a case of this. It's not something a person would ingest accidentally. This wasn't an accident, Alara. Someone poisoned your sister. The official confirmation hung in the air, terrifying and validating all at once. My secret was no longer a secret. The investigation was no longer just mine and Liam's. Elara? Liam asked, seeing the look on my face. I hung up the phone. They know, I whispered. They found the oleander in her system. Before he could respond, my phone buzzed again. It was a text from an unknown number. My hands trembled as I opened it. There was no text, only a single image. It was a photo of Liam and me, taken from a distance, sitting in the hospital garden earlier that day. A candid shot from a hidden vantage point. Beneath it, a single line of text appeared. Be careful who you talk to. Some secrets are best kept in the family. My mother knew I was investigating. And she was watching us. The text message was a declaration of war. My mother wasn't just a murderer in waiting, she was a predator, stalking us from the shadows, reminding me that she was always one step ahead. The fear it ignited was cold and sharp, but it was quickly being consumed by a white-hot rage. She was threatening us while my sister lay in a hospital bed because of her. She's threatening us, I said, showing the phone to Liam. His jaw tightened, his protective instincts flaring. This changes things, he said, his voice low and serious. She's not just trying to cover her tracks, she's actively intimidating a witness. The police need to know. Now. And say what? I countered, my mind racing. That my mother, Eleanor Blackwood, the city's beloved philanthropist, is sending me cryptic texts. They'll think it's a prank. We still don't have enough. It's my word against hers. We have the motive from the trust, and the hospital now has proof of the poison, Liam argued. It's a strong circumstantial case. Circumstantial is all it is. She'll say I'm trying to frame her to get control of the trust. She'll twist it. She'll find a way to make me look like the villain. You don't know her like I do. We needed something undeniable. We needed a confession. And I was the only one who could get it. That evening, I returned to the lion's den. I walked through the grand entrance of the manor, the silence of the vast hall amplifying the sound of my own frantic heartbeat. I found my parents in the drawing room, flanking the fireplace like statues. My father was staring into the flames, a glass of whiskey in his hand. My mother was reading a book, or pretending to. The hospital called, I announced, my voice clear and steady, betraying none of the terror I felt. They identified the poison. It was oleander. My father flinched, his head snapping up. My mother, however, slowly placed a bookmark in her novel and closed it, her movements deliberate and calm. She looked up at me, her expression a mask of polite inquiry. How terrible, she said coolly. A common garden plant. The police will have to investigate how such a thing could have happened at our home. Oh, I think I know how it happened, I said, taking a step closer. I think someone extracted it. Someone with an interest in toxicology. Someone who keeps notes on non-lethal dosages in a rosewood box in their study. The mask finally cracked. A flicker of genuine fury flashed in her eyes before being suppressed. My father looked from me to her, confusion and dawning horror on his face. Eleanor? What is she talking about? She's talking nonsense, Richard, Eleanor snapped, her voice like cracking ice. Our daughter is clearly having a breakdown. No, I'm not, I said, my voice rising. I'm having a revelation. You tried to put me in a coma to stop me from marrying Liam. You wrote it down in your own hand. A 2.5 milliliters dose. But you didn't count on Lena being impulsive. You didn't count on her being smaller than me. You almost killed your own daughter because you couldn't stand to lose control. Each word was a bullet, and I could see them hitting their mark. My mother's composure was crumbling, her face paling. You ungrateful child, she hissed, rising to her feet. After everything I have done for this family. I was protecting you. I was protecting our legacy from that fortune hunter. He would have destroyed everything our family has built. What our family has built. I laughed, a bitter, broken sound. This house? This money? It's a gilded cage, and you're the warden. And you were willing to sacrifice your own child to keep it pristine. Eleanor, for God's sake, Tell me this isn't true, my father pleaded, his face a mess of disbelief. Eleanor turned on him, her eyes blazing with a lifetime of resentment. You were never strong enough. I have held this family together my entire life. I have protected our name, our secrets. I did what had to be done to protect our future. By poisoning your daughter, he roared, the sound echoing in the cavernous room. It was a mistake, she screamed, the confession erupting from her, raw and desperate. The dose was wrong, I didn't mean for it to go this far. It was only meant to slow things down, to give her time to see reason. I was trying to protect the family secret. The room fell silent. The family secret. Plural. Not just her hatred for Liam. Something else. Something older and darker. My father went rigid. His face, which had been red with anger, drained of all color. He looked at Eleanor not with rage, but with sheer terror. Eleanor, don't, he whispered, his voice hoarse. A cold dread, far deeper than anything I had felt before, settled over me. This wasn't just about my wedding. This was about something my father was a part of. Something he was terrified of coming to light. My mother seemed to realize what she had said. She looked at my father, a silent, frantic communication passing between them. What secret? I demanded, my gaze flicking between my two parents. What other secret is there? Eleanor's face hardened again, retreating behind a wall of cold silence. But my father couldn't hide it. He looked like a man staring into an open grave. He sank back into his chair, defeated, the whiskey glass trembling in his hand. The attempted murder of a daughter wasn't the whole story. It was just the cover-up for something much, much worse. The silence that followed my mother's outburst was heavier than any sound. It was a silence filled with the weight of a secret my father was clearly terrified of. He wouldn't meet my eye. He just stared at the floor, a broken man. My mother, Eleanor, stood rigid, her jaw clenched, a cornered animal preparing for a final, desperate fight. What secret, Dad? I pressed again, my voice softer now, laced with a chilling premonition. What was she protecting? He shook his head, a pathetic, defeated gesture. You don't want to know, Elara. Some things are better left buried. Lena is lying in a hospital bed because of those buried things. I shot back, my patience gone. I have a right to know what I was almost sacrificed for. It was Liam, who had entered the room silently behind me a few moments earlier, who broke the stalemate. He had been listening from the doorway. Was it about the Blackwood Industrial acquisition in '82? Liam asked, his voice calm and level. My father's head snapped up, his eyes wide with shock. Liam took a step forward, holding his phone. I kept digging, Elara. I couldn't understand the level of paranoia. It was more than just me. I looked back, way back. In 1982, Blackwood Holdings, then run by your grandfather, acquired a competitor, a smaller company called North Star Manufacturing. It was a hostile takeover, but the official story is that the CEO of North Star, a man named Marcus Thorne, embezzled funds and fled, leaving the company ripe for the picking. I remember the stories, my father mumbled. Grandfather saved hundreds of jobs. That's the story he told, Liam continued, his eyes locked on my father. But there are no records of Marcus Thorne ever leaving the country. No new identity, no trail. He and his entire family just vanished. His wife, his young son. They disappeared off the face of the earth. The police investigation went cold. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Your mother wasn't just worried I'd dilute the family fortune, Richard. She was terrified that a forensic accountant marrying into the family might get curious about the very foundation that fortune was built on. She was afraid I'd find what she's been hiding her whole life. My father finally broke. A sob tore from his throat. It was an accident, he choked out, the words tumbling over each other. My father, he confronted Thorne. He was trying to force the sale. There was an argument. A struggle. Thorne fell. He hit his head. He looked at my mother, his expression pleading. Eleanor's father didn't mean to. He meant to cover it up, my mother said, her voice devoid of all emotion. He did what was necessary to protect his family. Thorne's wife threatened to go to the police. So he made them disappear. For us. For our future. For you, Elara. The horror of it washed over me. My entire life, my privilege, the very house I stood in, was built on a foundation of murder and lies. My grandfather was a killer. And my parents had spent their lives as accessories after the fact, perpetuating the lie, guarding the monstrous secret. Lena and I were the beneficiaries of a crime so heinous it defied comprehension. This was the legacy my mother was so obsessed with. Not a legacy of success, but a legacy of sin. Liam wasn't just an unsuitable husband, he was an existential threat, a man whose professional skills could unravel the lie that had defined their entire existence. The poison wasn't just to stop a wedding, it was a desperate, insane act to protect a secret grave. I looked at my mother, truly saw her for the first time. Not as my mother, but as a woman so twisted by this dark inheritance that she would rather poison her own child than risk the truth seeing the light of day. There was no choice to be made. Not really. I pulled out my phone. My father saw it and whispered, "Elara, no. Please." But I was already dialing. 911. "I need to report a crime," I said, my voice shaking but clear. 2 crimes. An attempted murder and a cold case from 1982. I gave them our address. The aftermath was a storm. The police arrived, separating us, taking statements. My mother was silent and defiant. My father confessed to everything, his words choked with decades of guilt. The story of Marcus Thorne and his family, buried for 40 years, was finally unearthed. The rosewood box in the journal became Exhibit A. The text message became Exhibit B. My parents were arrested. 6 months later. The lilies in the vase were bright yellow, cheerful and sunny. Lena was sitting up in a wheelchair by the window of her rehabilitation center, her movements still slow, but her smile was back. Her memory of the party was a blur, and the doctors had advised us to spare her the goriest details of our family's history for now. All she knew was that Mom and Dad had done a terrible thing, and they were paying for it. It was enough. Liam and I stood behind her, his arm around my waist. The Blackwood Manor was being sold, its contents liquidated to create a restitution fund for the long-lost relatives of the Thorne family whom Liam's investigators had managed to locate. Our family name was no longer a synonym for wealth and class, but for infamy and murder. It was a legacy of ash. "You know," Lena said, turning to look at us, her eyes clear. "I'm glad you're getting married in a courthouse. Big parties are overrated." I smiled, a real, genuine smile. I agree. We had lost a family, a fortune, and a past I once thought was mine. But as I looked from my sister's recovering smile to the steadfast love in Liam's eyes, I knew we hadn't lost everything. We had the truth. We had a future we could build on solid ground, not on buried bones. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly free.